My name is Yoni. Welcome to the Stay Home, Stay Connected program. Today, we're really happy to be joined by Emily and Maggie, who are two social workers with our perinatal and pediatric social work departments. And we're so happy to have them here to talk more about self-care.
Hi, everybody. I am going to get started, and I'm Emily of the Emily and Maggie group, and I'm really happy and grateful that the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology put this together and to have this opportunity to connect in whatever way that we can during this pandemic. So today's going to be a very basic overview of self-care, and some of the themes you'll notice will be repeated throughout the series that we're doing. And we feel like you can't get too much information about certain issues. Pregnancy is often a time that we pause and stop and we pay attention to what self-care activities we include in our life or don't include in our life, even though self-care is a lifelong journey and something that we should be doing pregnancy or not pregnancy. You can take this time during your pregnancy when we present to think about your own self-care needs and to reflect on yourself during that time. So with that said, if everyone wouldn't mind, if you're so inclined to grab a pen and a piece of paper, there'll be about 3 times that we're going to stop and ask questions throughout the presentation. So this is our agenda. What is self-care exactly? What are we talking about? When we talk about self-care, there is a huge range of definitions for self-care. What are the benefits of self-care, common barriers to self-care, self-care activities, very specific examples that you might want to engage in, and then putting this into place altogether. Before I went on, I felt like I really needed to include this slide. It says the mind-body problem, with the mind saying get up and the body saying no. I guess I feel like self-care has become a very strong industry, and I also feel like there's often a lot of felt pressure in pregnancy to change all of your lifestyle habits. And I just wanted to be real that some days we're not doing it all and we can't do it all. And some days my mind says get up and my body says no, and my self-care is giving myself permission and compassion to say this isn't going to be the day. And because we're going to give you so many self-care ideas, I felt like we also needed to give you the contrast, which is self-compassion and that you just can't always do it. So what is the kind of self-care that we are talking about today specifically? The kind of self-care that I'm trying to bring up and Maggie is trying to bring up is self-care it's an activity with intention. It's a purposeful choice to involve something in your life that will reduce stress and include more peacefulness for you. Ideally, this is meaningful and this is sustainable. And this is a really important piece to me because, again, I'm talking about the outside world, but we hear a lot about going to the spa or getting a massage, or getting a manicure. And that's one definition of self-care. And it might well be self-care for a lot of us or a lot of you. For me, that's not sustainable. Maybe for some, you can get a massage or have a spa day every day. So if you were to treat yourself to a spa day, let's say on a Sunday, and then treat yourself poorly and be stressed out on Monday through Saturday, it kind of negates the benefits of the spa day that you had on Sunday. So I'm talking about thinking about this as, unfortunately, it's work, something that's daily, meaningful, and sustainable. The next is that self-care is something that's unique to you. It's not just a list of things that everybody has to do. We would encourage you to really stop for a moment and pause and think, what am I missing in my life that would offer me less stress and more peacefulness? And that's going to be different for different people for sure. And I guess I just wanted to share with you that during this COVID time, talking to people on the phone, doing therapy over video, I've learned a lot of people's differences in self-care. And so let's say you, before the quarantine, you were somebody who did your self-care outside of the home. A lot of people go to their health club. A lot of people go to a yoga class, and it's not only the yoga class, it's also the camaraderie with their classmates. Some people have a drive home, and that's 30 minutes of listening to music they enjoy and just, relaxing before they enter the home. Some people have 10 minutes before they pick up their kid from school in the car where they can listen to a podcast, and that's self-care. All of these things have kind of gone away with the pandemic, and it's wreaked havoc for a lot of people. And sometimes your self-care needs and your partner's self-care needs, if you have one, or other people in the homes aren't compatible. And that takes negotiation too. So being aware of what you needs are, and being able to communicate that with your partner is important. I'm just going to quick give you one other example of what comes up often when I'm talking to people on the phone related to that, is that there are a lot of people that I hear from that say, you know, what I really need at the end of the day is to snuggle up with my partner, watch TV or whatever. But my partner wants to go down to the basement and withdraw and do a project, and therefore creates a challenge for this relationship. They're both self-care, but if we can talk about them as this is what I need and that's what I need and negotiate, then that's really helpful. And then last, self-care is an act of prioritizing yourself as a value, being aware of your own value. And I put this in here because when we engage in a new relationship, whether that relationship is going to be with our newborn baby, or whether that relationship is with a new partner, or with something not alive or alive, like a plant, or get a new cell phone, or get a new piece of furniture, we treat that thing carefully. We treat whatever it is that is new and that we bring into our life with value. We're careful not to hurt it. We take good care of it. We're meaningful, we're purposeful. We don't want to drop our phones, et cetera, et cetera. And I think sometimes we don't do the same things for ourselves. So I really wanted to point that out, that it's really showing that you have value. I just liked this because I thought it corresponded well with what I was trying to say. It says you wouldn't let this happen to your phone, although I'm sure there's plenty of us who have let this happen to our phone where our battery is entirely depleted. But I think you get the concept. It says self-care is a priority. It's not a luxury. You need to fill yourself up in order to provide. The most common categories for self-care, Maggie is going to go into much more great detail about them, so I'll just quickly review the slide here. Physical, so sleep and rest, hydration, nutrition, exercise. Social, connection to community, family, relationships. Mental, stimulation of the brain, learning, thinking, creativity, and mastery. Spiritual, a deeper sense of meaning or something bigger than yourself. Emotional, healthy ways to cope with a range of emotions and feelings. So these are the most common categories of self-care. This is a little bit off. I include this slide because I think it offers an opportunity for us to conceptualize self-care in a completely different way, which I find amazingly helpful, and maybe you will too. This is Paul Gilbert's 3 circles of emotional regulation. The bottom circle is the threat system, and that's a system that if you did not experience anxiety, let's say, for instance, prior to COVID-19, you're likely experiencing it now. So this is our fear, fight, flight system, where we need to manage and protect ourselves, and we worry, and we're scared, and we're sad. And so a lot of us are going through this right now. We're pregnant in the time of a pandemic, and that's not what we expected. We're worried about our health. We're worried about other people's health. We're worried about our finances and our job security. So there's a lot going on in that threat system right now. And then up on my left-hand corner is the drive system, the blue circle, which is the system that tries to take action. So it tries to control the things that you can control. I call it going on with normal life. You still need to go on with normal life, so you're going to control what you can. So you're still going to cook dinner for your family that night. You still can have a sense of accomplishment by having gone for that walk you wanted. So I would argue that right now, most of us are kind of circulating between our threat and our drive system. I can't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of us are probably at a more heightened anxiety, wondering what if, especially with pregnancy. And what gets left out a lot is the green circle, which is the soothing system, the slowing down system, the resting, the digesting, the feeling safe, being kind and caring system. And this is particularly poignant to me now because this is our roles as parents when we have a new baby. It is our role to help regulate and soothe our babies. They will not have that skill initially. And so what a great time during your pregnancy to stop and think about what you do to soothe yourself. And so what I'm going to do now is just give you a really small example of something that I've learned later in life that really works for me. Not the only thing, but When I'm feeling ramped up, when I'm more in my threat system and I feel that starting to get all, going, I just take a breath, I lean back. And if you feel like you want to do this with me, please do. I take a breath and lean back and I put my hand over my heart. And honestly, it relaxes my body and it relaxes me and it helps to just start that process of soothing. Hopefully this presentation is not making you anxious, but again, I encourage you to try it right now, just to gently put your hand over your heart and see if you feel any physical sensation of relaxation. And with that, I would ask you to grab your pen and paper and write down what you think you do right now to soothe yourself and what you think you do right now in the category of self-care. Just going to give you a minute to do that. If you're like me, you're probably like, oh, I'm not going to write it down. I'm just going to do it in my head. So I'll move on. The benefits of self-care, we talked about a little bit. It's really to decrease stress, to relax and calm both your body and your mind. Self-care increases your resilience by preparing your capacity to handle distress now. And there's a lot of research out there that supports this. We are all too familiar with the research about physical exercise and how that benefits our body and our mind. We know it. We don't always do it, but we all know that it's out there and that it's valid data and information. There's also a lot of studies about mindful meditation, and you can start small, so please don't feel overwhelmed when I say this, but the studies are around 10 to 12 minutes of mindful meditation daily. They show that over time, they change the neuroplasticity in your brain, generally relaxing your nervous system. So this is really good news because monks, for instance, do this for their lifetime. And we no longer have to do this for a lifetime. We can take 10 to 12 minutes a day and have a way that will help over time to relax our nervous system. I don't do 10 to 12 minutes a day. And so I would extrapolate and say, maybe starting with 1 minute a day, 30 seconds a day, 5 minutes a day. If it has benefits for 10 to 12 minutes, it likely has benefits for longer. So this is to increase our resilience so that when crises like these pandemic hit, we're a little bit more able to handle them. And again, showing value. By showing yourself that you have value and that you deserve to take time for self-care, it improves your feelings of self-worth over time. So this is the last section that I'm going to go over, which is the common myths about self-care. And they're not just myths, they're barriers. And I'm going to say what it is, and then maybe give a little counter thought to each one of them. It's selfish or self-indulgent. I first would ask you to think, why do you think that? Why do you think it's selfish to take care of yourself? What's going on? What's the story you're telling yourself? The second thing I might say to you is, I guess I don't think it's selfish or self-indulgent to take care of your most basic needs, which is to nurture your own body and your own mind. And then the third example I might give to you is brushing our teeth is in fact an act of self-care. It's a physical act of self-care, and we do that every single day, and we do not think it's selfish. Another common thing that we hear or common barrier is that others need me more. There's just too much need out there. I have too many people that really need me more. And that may well be true, that other people are suffering more than you are or need you more because they can't meet their own needs for various reasons, whether they're elderly or young or whatever. I guess it's not really a competition. If your ability to take care of yourself doesn't negate your ability to also then take care of other people. So I would encourage you to fill your battery so that you've got some juice to extend on to other people. And then a lot of times we hear, I'm good. I don't need it. My life is kind of stable and good the way it is. That may include a life that already has a lot of self-care integrated into it, or it might include a life that doesn't, but people feel stable and calm. And then that's where I just pull in the resilience piece, where we have data to show that you might be good now, but over time, we know this helps to shore you up when things become challenging. And in fact, when you are good, when you are feeling at your best self, is the time to start self-care. Time to start self-care is not when you're in crisis, not when you're having a panic attack. you can do it during that time. But this is meant to be something that's sustained over time. Another common myth is it takes too much time. And yeah, that's true. I think some activities do take too much time or a lot of time. And so that means compromising with your self-care activities. If you're a runner, for instance, and you have children at home and it's COVID and they're not young enough to stay by themselves, you may not be able to take the length of runs that you normally enjoy. So sometimes it does take compromise. However, when Maggie goes over examples of self-care, there are several options and opportunities that are very brief. Some people don't think it's going to help, and I really tie this in with not having realistic expectations. It's not a magic bullet, and it's not the one-time luxury like a massage or a spa day or a manicure. That might help at the moment. You might feel good. It might fill you up. But realistic expectations are that you have to take care of yourself over time in order to see the results. You know, we don't water a plant once and stick it in the corner and then say, that didn't work. You know, so we have to offer it sunshine. We have to move it around a little bit. We have to take off the dead leaves. I don't have the resources. So that again depends on what kind of self-care you want to do. There are some self-cares that require resources, but there are plenty that don't. And in this day and age, there are plenty of free resources on the internet. And if you have questions about those, we can help you with that too. I don't want to ask for help and I don't have any help. And those are two different things to me. Sometimes we do need to ask for help in order to take the time out to take care of ourselves. And sometimes we don't want to ask. So that takes a little bit of a time to kind of figure out why isn't it that you don't want to ask? Is it because you think self-care is selfish? Is it because you're afraid someone's going to say no? What are the reasons that you don't want to ask for that time to do what you need for yourself? If you don't have any help, that's a real problem. And I'm not going to pretend that doesn't discourage a lot of people from implementing self-care. And that takes some creativity and maybe working with somebody to figure out how that can be part of your life if you're motivated to do it, even though you don't sometimes have the support and help at home. It's out of your pattern or your routine. That one is me for sure. Like if it's not part of my pattern, why would I do it? I just, I don't exercise on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but it's a Wednesday. It's not my thing. So again, I'm going to give brushing teeth as an example of something that so many of us have well integrated into our pattern of self-care. And just think about that as a way that you can do something just as simply. Anxiety and depression or other mental health concerns are often strong barriers to implementing self-care for a variety of reasons. And the self-care that I would encourage anyone that might be challenged in that area with anxiety or depression is to reach out. Please contact a social worker, whatever your support systems are, professional or otherwise, and try to get some support for the anxiety and the depression first so that you can integrate some of these in over time. And the last barrier that I've put in here, although I'm sure you guys can come up with more, is perfectionism. And I put this here, it's a really popular barrier and challenge in parenting in general. We find a lot of people struggle with the transition to parenthood and or even their pregnancies because they have perfectionistic tendencies and didn't maybe realize them. So the idea of being good enough, okay, so I'm going to start running. I can't run a marathon. I'm going to run 2 blocks every day. That's good enough. I'd like this idea of mindful meditation, but my mind always wanders and I can't do it. And so every time I do it, I kind of fail at it. No, you can do it for 30 seconds and let your mind wander and just do it every day. It does not need to be perfect to start with. And so just like we asked for you to look at your self-soothing mechanisms and your self-care, I'm also going to ask you to take a look at yourself and identify what you think the barriers are for taking care of yourself or for implementing more self-care activities into your life. Maggie will switch the screen over and she will take over after that.
Give you guys a minute to kind of reflect on that. Okay. So you guys have gotten to think a little bit about barriers to self-care. Let's talk about actual ideas. This is nowhere near an inclusive list, and some of them work for pregnancy and some of them work outside of pregnancy and parenting in general. And we're going to kind of do a brief overview of them. And then in subsequent sessions, we'll actually, ourselves or our coworkers will talk about them more. So the first category would be physical self-care ideas. And really, it's about what can you do versus I have to do. So it might be sleeping or resting as you can. It might not be getting 8 hours of sleep. It might be, you get to lie down for 30 minutes in the middle of the day, and that's it, right? In between doing chores or working from home or something. Hydrating, making sure that you have enough water. Eating foods that make your body feel good. And we say body feel good because there might be foods that give you more energy or might help your mood or might help with nausea versus like healthy versus unhealthy foods. Getting meaningful movement and exercise. And kind of Emily's example is maybe not running a few miles, but maybe taking a walk around the block. Or maybe it's you do 5 minutes of gentle yoga from YouTube, like once a day. Getting outside is really important, especially right now. Getting out into the sunshine, being in nature, even if all you do is step right outside your front stoop. The little things count, the things that we take for granted. So taking a shower and brushing teeth and changing clothes that some people are just not doing right now because it's kind of hard to say what day it is, right? And so these are the times where even if you change from yoga clothes to another pair of yoga clothes or pajamas, it actually helps you feel better. I think we can all say when we don't do these things in a few days, we just don't really feel like ourselves anymore. And then an obvious would be medical care. So attending appointments, either virtual or in person, taking medication as prescribed, and following some of the guidelines that are set by your OB. Ideas for community, family, and relationships. The importance of staying connected and the importance of improving those connections can be really hard right now. Using things like FaceTime or text or Zoom, email, letters. Some people do care packages for their neighbors. And at the same time, also grieving, what that support plan was going to look like, right? So what was it going to look like to have that baby shower or take those in-person childcare classes or labor classes? What it would feel like to have like the doula support in the way you had hoped for, or what your postpartum support plan would have looked like and now what it is. It is okay to grieve that difference in expectations. So it might be finding new ways of creating and supporting your village. The Stay Home, Stay Connected program is a really great example of that. So finding people of similar gestation where you can feel supported. There's also many virtual groups out there, whether pregnancy for mom or babies, religious groups, or for people in recovery, 12-step or smart recovery. I think one thing that's really important is if you are with safe people, opening up and being vulnerable with them. This is hard. This is hard for everyone. And I think sometimes going back to like that perfectionistic idea is I should be acting differently. I should be taking care of myself differently. And it's helpful to kind of talk about this is hard. We're going through this and getting the support you need around that. So I also want to talk about friends and relationships, which might not be as helpful. Oftentimes in pregnancy and parenting, people believe they can start to weigh in on what people are saying or doing or feeling. I don't know if any of you have had that happen yet, but it often happens. And so I want to say with people that you don't trust, or maybe you have like a traumatic relationship with, or people that just aren't there to support you, it's okay to make boundaries. It's okay to keep boundaries. It's okay to say no. No, I don't want to talk right now. No, this is not an idea I want to do. Thanks for the feedback, but I'm going to still do what I need to do. Another aspect of this is that, and Emily talked about the perfectionism, is that our society as a whole has this very idealistic and unrealistic expectation for women who are pregnant and for people who are pregnant and parenting that is often internalized, right? So it's really important to kind of think about your journey as your journey versus this negative, versus what Dr. Oz or someone else might say it should look like, right? And this is really common in social media too. So an example would be you have a friend who, let's say, is 7 months pregnant, has this beautiful photo of her for her maternity shoot. The sun is shining. She looks gorgeous, and you have hyperemesis and feel awful. And you look at this and you go, oh, I should feel like that, and I don't. Like there's something wrong with me. You don't know if in between takes she was throwing up, or if she's struggling with anxiety, or if she's worried about her baby. And so I really love this image. It's from Emily McDowell. And it's the idea of, I will not compare myself to strangers on the internet. I would say acquaintances on the internet as well. Some mental ideas for self-care. A lot of this is focusing on pleasure and mastery. So pleasure, and having joy and feeling those emotions, and mastery of feeling accomplished. And right now, that is more important than ever to feel like, here's something I can do, I can complete, and I can control, with everything kind of feeling a little bit more up in the air and scary. So it might be things like drawing or singing, cooking, writing, puzzles, small projects around the house. Knowing that many of these, you might be like, no, I don't want to do puzzles, or no, I don't want to knit. Maybe it's organizing my bathroom feels really great, or making a cabinet, it can be lots of different things. One other idea I want to kind of talk about along with mental ideas of self-care is just thinking about how we look at lists of kind of what we need to do, right? We make to-do lists. And so I like to challenge people to think about making a done list. So instead of having like these 7, 10, 15, 20 things that you feel like you have to do and feel overwhelmed, and then maybe feeling not good enough, it might be just saying, hey, this is what I did today. And it might be saying, hey, I got up, I brushed my teeth, I made breakfast, maybe I drew something, maybe I took the dog for a walk. And I bet you can think of a lot more things that you've actually done versus looking at the comparison of a to-do list and kind of feeling like I am doing something today versus feeling overwhelmed about all the things that need to be done. So spiritual ideas for self-care. So prayer, whether it's just for yourself, whether it's to the idea of a higher power or the universe, having that faith there. It means connecting with religious communities, whether watching like virtual services or, having smaller groups. It also means connecting to common humanity. And I think because we are so isolated, it is really easy to forget that there is a common thread among all of us, and that is we are all taking care of ourselves and staying in to try to support everybody else. And sometimes the idea of being linked, even if we're not in the same space, can be really helpful. So emotional ideas, there are lots of emotional ideas. So we're really doing a brief overview of these. One thing that Emily had talked about was mindfulness. And so I want to give a very short definition of mindfulness that is not inclusive at all. It's really simple. Focusing one's awareness on the present without judgment. I think when we talk about mindfulness, it feels like this very vague concept. Also, a lot of times mindfulness gets conflated with meditation, whereas meditation is only one form of mindfulness. So you can be mindful while washing the dishes. You can be mindful while holding a baby. You can be mindful while driving in the car, being able to focus on those moments. And also knowing that if thoughts come up, it's okay to kindly come back to that initial state, right? Come back to those feelings of, this is what I'm doing, this is how it feels. Because mindfulness can feel overwhelming, a lot of times we recommend start small and start guided. So instead of, doing 10 to 12 minutes a day, which is really great, maybe doing 5 minutes, maybe doing 30 seconds. A couple of resources that I really like and Emily really likes. The New York Times has Meditations for Real Life. It's about mindfulness as well. But they actually have examples of like how to be mindful when you're in an argument with your in-laws, or how to be mindful in the fall, or how to be mindful, and this is the last image, how to be mindful while making coffee or tea. Apps are really good for this, smartphone apps. So Headspace and Calm and Insight Timer also have very short sessions that you can do that build on one another that are guided. And so that can be something really nice that if you only have 2 minutes or only have 5 minutes, you can do that. So other emotional ideas are journaling, which is really just kind of getting your thoughts out and on paper, right? And it can be really helpful for processing emotion and for labeling it. Like, I have all these thoughts in my head. What am I going to do with them? I feel so jumbled. And actually maybe even journaling or just free writing for a while, kind of going, oh, maybe that's what's going on for me. Maybe I'm really disappointed or angry. or scared, and how do I move through this? Another one that you guys have probably heard about is a gratitude list. And so a gratitude list is something that should not take a very long period of time. It's maybe doing something, writing down 3 things in the morning or 3 things just before you go to bed. And it can be things like, I was really happy to hold my partner's hand today, or my coffee just tasted so good, or I got to see the sun before it started raining again. Things like that. Just to kind of say that even in really hard days, there are still things that we can appreciate. As social workers, we always encourage therapy for a few reasons. One is to have a space where you can feel safe to let your feelings out, right? You don't have to worry about somebody being subjective. You don't have to worry about them coming back later about how you're feeling, having a place to be validated and heard. Also, learning new skills to deal with anxiety or depression, and how to kind of move forward. So being with your feelings is really, really important, whether it's through journaling or gratitude or mindfulness or therapy. Being able to stay with them and feel them and, I say label them, you can really kind of work on how do you want to go through them as well, and how do you want to feel better. So again, super quick overview of some more ideas, relaxation exercises. And these can be minuscule, right? So you can drop your jaw, you can try to relax your forehead. One thing I really like is just noticing your shoulders. So a lot of us have our shoulders way up here most of the time, and we don't even know it. And so sometimes just even relaxing them back, you can feel the difference with the tension. So soothing exercises, kind of like Emily said, hand over heart. Some people rub their hands, they rub their arms, and it's just kind of being there for themselves, right? You are okay, I'm here. Grounding exercises, and you guys will learn about this from Leslie Pertz next month, is finding activities and exercises you can do when you feel so emotionally heightened that you can't focus, right? You feel so overwhelmed. And that can be trying to name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. It might be just something, or, counting how many blue things are in the room. Really just trying to get you back to being in the present. And then breathing exercises, which we hear lots of different ways to breathe. And so sometimes that can be really frustrating. There's slow diaphragmatic breathing, there's square breathing, there's 4 in and 8 out, there is nostril breathing, there's so many different kinds. And so the importance of the breathing is what works for you and how it works for you. I think a lot of people are like, no, breathing does not work for me at all. But there are some things that you can do that actually might help it a little bit more. One is practicing breathing when you're not anxious, because it's like a habit. The more you do it, the more it becomes part of your routine. And so you can better access it when you are feeling upset. So I want to take a quick minute and I want to try some square breathing. I like square breathing as kind of an initial exercise because you don't have to worry about different numbers, right? Or you don't have to worry about things like that. So if you guys can bear with me for a moment, what I'd like to do is kind of bring you through it maybe once or twice. And so with square breathing, you inhale, and count to 4, you hold it, and count to 4, you exhale, and count to 4, and then you rest. You blow out all that breath, and count to 4. So I'd like to just try that one more time. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Rest, 2, 3, 4. And it's not focusing on how much you're getting in your inhale or your exhale. It's just counting through. I do want to take a moment to talk about self-care during COVID-19. A lot of us are trying to be good consumers and stay up with what the news is, what policies are, what's happening. And sometimes that can be really overwhelming. And so I really want to give a gentle reminder that it's okay to set boundaries with what you watch and how much you watch. It's okay to opt out of overwhelming conversations. It's okay to focus on things you can control. And, it's really helpful to be mindful when, is this actually me being informed, or is this just adding fuel to my anxiety? So giving yourself a break. So how to implement sustainable self-care. Most important thing is buy-in. You showing up for you. You saying, I need this, I deserve it, it is important. If you were talking to a friend, what would you tell them about self-care? Setting your intention to doing it and commitment. So again, that can be realistic goals, right? So you might set your intention to spend 5 minutes outside, right? And committing to doing that. What can you do? What works for you? If 2 miles doesn't work, if 8 hours of sleep doesn't work, if eating more green veggies doesn't work, like what works for you? It also means with people you feel safe with, asking for what you need from them, whether that's time or space or childcare or whatever support. All of this also, I really want to reemphasize having self-compassion with self-care. Again, like Emily said, it's really easy to kind of get overwhelmed with the idea of self-care and that there's a certain way to do it. And if we start to kind of create ourselves a list of it, it might feel so overwhelming and then we feel worse, right? And so try the buy-in, try to set the intention, try to make that commitment, but it's also okay if all you did was survive. There are days where that is it and that is the goal. So again, we want to have you guys take a few minutes and kind of think about what are some new ideas that you feel like you could do. Thank you.
Big thank you to Maggie Miras and Emily Gutman, members of our social work team, who spoke with us about different strategies for self-care. As a reminder, this video is always available. You're welcome to go back to parts that may feel more helpful to you at a different time in your pregnancy, or if you'd like to refresh some of the ideas that we talked about. As always, our perinatal social work program here at Michigan Medicine is available for you as you go through your pregnancy as well as postpartum. Don't hesitate to reach out to your provider, either your OBGYN, family medicine, or midwife provider. They'd be happy to connect you with services that we have here in our system. So thank you.